So without further ado, I'd like to introduce an aquascaper known around the world for his attention to detail and chemistry in the plant world. He's a master of craft and Sea Chem's very own Luis Navarro. Put your hands together.
Good luck, thank you. Well, it's a pleasure and a privilege for me to be here in Australia. This is my first time in your country and I'm loving it. It's a dream come true. And we have a lot of people, so we're going to make this fast and furious. We're going to cover things that you probably are not very familiar with, because sadly the way aquascaping is approaching the youth and the people is through social media. So what we get to see is just a quick image of a beautiful tank, and half the time most people don't understand how it got there and why. And understanding the basics is what's going to make the difference in between how you keep a planted aquarium and how long can you keep it. So the first thing I will have to say is that make up your mind on what you want to do. If you decide that you want to aquascape, stick to it and learn it. Aquascaping is complex, and it's something that is actually making people compete for a living. So putting together a tank like the one designed behind you takes days sometimes. You cannot just whip these things together in 20 minutes and plant it and just salt it and be over with. It takes more than that. When you look at competition aquariums, most of the time you will see the planning, and it will take roughly in between 6 to 8 weeks just to put the tank glued together the way they want it. Make a selection of the style you like, stick to it and learn it well. Now, what if that's not your cup of tea? What if you really enjoy plants and you want to keep a tank that is going to make your house look beautiful and it's going to tend to the plants for a long term, right? The beauty of aquascaping nowadays is that it's been made simple thanks to one beautiful ingredient that we didn't have in the past, and that's what you have behind or on the side, which is the aqua soils. Aqua soils are designed to provide enough nutrition for the plants to thrive and take a very quick growth without having to do much, right? Fertilization won't even be an issue until later in the setting of the plant tank. So the difference in between aqua soils is completely your choice. We at Sea Chem, we use Aquasolum, which is a humate-based substrate that, unlike others, you will not get that load of nutrients that will give you an ammonia spike that is going to be much too drastic, or it will give you a high concentration of organics that is going to deplete your water from alkalinity and pH as well. So that being said, the reason why you see all these tutorials online that you have to do water changes every day for a week, it's that reason. And once you get rid of all these first stage of like load of nutrients, then the tank will balance itself, the plant growth will compensate, and you will get a beautiful planted tank. And it's soon after that when this will challenge you, because if you pass that 4-month line, the plants, they will no longer get what they need from the soils, and then you're going to have to start supplementing your water. And this is when it gets tricky. This is when the algae blooms happen. This is when people get frustrated and they will start using every single remedy in the book and then some. So now let's understand how a planted aquarium works and why. So we're going to look at the pyramid, right? First things first, we just talk about it, the soil. That's going to be the foundation, the substrate. What do you want to do? Do you want to aquascape? Do you want a tank that you're going to keep for maybe, let's say, 12 to 18 months? Yes, you can use Aquasoil completely, you can. All right, what about if I want to do a system that I will not have to be dealing with, because it's a tank that is 3 meters long, 1 meter wide, and I just want it packed up with plants? Can you use Aquasoil? Yes, you can. how long are you going to be able to keep it? You will be able to keep it for a while, especially if you know what you're doing. But if you want something that is going to last forever and ever, you go with mineral soils. Mineral soils are in the line of the company that I represent. We have Flourish, Fluorite Red, Fluorite Black, and each and every single one of them can be used for a specific project, right? Like all the red ones, they're rich in iron, and the dark ones, they're rich in calcium and magnesium. So this is when your knowledge of plants will be more accurate to what you want to do. But once you set up a tank with this particular type of substrates, you can keep them for as many years as you want. The difference is that you need to know what you're doing, because you're going to have to be aware of your dosings, and we're going to get into that later. But remember, first stage is going to be the substrate. This is going to be the foundation of your system. Today, we're going to use Aquasolum. I whipped together a small design. It's a very wide tank. So the first thing I keep in mind when I do something like this is, what do I want to accomplish? I want to see something that is striking, and here comes a very easy aquascaping guide 101. So you look at a tank and you divide it in 1/3, 2/3, and the third, and then you do the same here. Professional aquascapers, you will see this grid all the time, right? They select a negative, a focal point, a negative space, and they just walk around it. When you're new, you can get into it and design something that is very complex, but for me, it's a lot easier to teach you guys to do something that is very simple. And even when it's simple, it will be beautiful. So, two simple rules to follow. The ratio of 2 to 1. When you have a rectangular shape and you have a structure that is bigger than the opposite side, and you keep them off the center and you have a negative space in between them, say you have one space here and the large one here, and you have a negative space here, right? That will create a space, perception, and it will actually be a lot easier for you to create depth or add depth to it by having a well-defined foreground, a well-defined middle ground, and a very healthy background. So we're going to stick to that idea, but we're going to use a triangular, triangular design. So we're going to follow a different concept here. We're going to go with a lush growth in the back that is going to be trimmed, following the contour of the structure, right? We're going to make it look deeper by using leaves that actually have a wider leaf, and we're going to narrow it down to the finest stem leaves in the back. We're going to have a well-defined foreground. We're going to use Anubias Petite. Anubia Petite we're using. We're going to use epiphytic plants, Microsorum. We may use some Bulbitis. And we're going to make accents with moss, and we're going to have an open foreground. And the beauty of doing an open foreground, which is also very friendly for newbies, is that you don't really have to do much planting here. We're just going to use a decoration sand that is going to make this tank look deep and beautiful. And the best part is that in the future, when you're more confident with what you're doing, all you really need to do is to get a bucket and a hose, and you can siphon all that out, and you can replace it with aqua soil and plant a ground cover like the one behind you, which is Hemianthus calyticroides, or you can do a mini hair grass, or you can do glossostigma, without having to make much of a change. So it's good for beginners, it's easy to put together, it's nothing complicated, and I'm going to give you a tip that is probably one that took me a while to understand, but get your stuff together first. It's not, what we're doing today is flat out crazy. Don't ever do what we're doing today. Break your work into threes. Buy the equipment that you need. You know it's quite investment. Make sure you have everything. Filtration, illumination, stands, CO2 systems, diffusers, everything. Get it. Once you know you have everything, then start thinking about the hardscape. What I'm using today, it's all from Mad Aquatics. Everything came from that shelf and this shelf. Everything is from here. I believe you have a dojo, right, where you can play? Right behind me. There you go. That will help you a great deal, especially when you're not very familiar with spaces and that you have to put together. There is a saying in aquascaping: rocks shrink underwater. Right? You may grab a rock and think that it looks big to you, but the minute you put it underwater and you fill up that tank, it's like, shoop, it reduces in size. So look at this here. Look at the size of this. Looks impressive, right? It almost looks like it's too much. Add water to it. It just balances it out. So don't be afraid to use oversized pieces. The benefit of using pieces that are bigger than, for instance, something small like today, is that you will need less plants, you will need less substrates, and it will be a lot easier for you to understand the breaking process of a planted tank. So get your hardscape, play with it. If it takes a week, so be it. But once you're happy with the result, all right, you stick to the plan, and then you start thinking about what are you going to plant it with, and you make your list. Again, buying plants, it's going to be expensive too, so break it into 3. Equipment, hardscape, planting. And then you spread it. You don't have to do it all together in one day, stressed out. I need to finish, my plants are going to die. There's none of that. And you can make yourself a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, and get to work, play some music, and enjoy the moment. Again, what we're doing today is express aquascaping, so I advise you not to ever do that. All right, let's carry on, enough talking. We're going to use substrate in the back, sand in the front. So I roughly have an idea of what I'm doing. If you're going to design something that is going to be planted through and through, 3 to 4 centimeters, all the way up to as high as you want. I mean, look at the tank behind you. I think it's like, what, 10 centimeters away from the surface? So you can go high. It's not a problem. The beauty of aquatic plants is that once they root, they move water through the substrate. So they're always, when they're healthy, moving water in and out, and that's the reason why we can afford to do what we do. So don't be afraid. If you're really that creative, pile it up. No problems there. But ideally, again, 10 to 15 centimeters, bring it down to 3. Nice slope, and it's more than enough to do something really nice. Thank you. So because we're doing a triangular design, I'm going to kind of like use a higher amount on the side where the structure is going to start fading down. And that way I can slope it and, emphasize more the structure and the look of the aquarium. So it's going to be slightly higher on the left side. When it comes to planted aquariums, the always confusing question is about your water chemistry. Oh, I cannot grow plants because my water is hard. Oh, I cannot grow plants because I don't have reverse osmosis water. Well, you can grow plants in any type of water, to be honest with you. You just need to be aware of which plants can you use. True aquatic plants will actually do quite well in alkaline conditions because they will actually use the carbonates and bicarbonates to their benefit as a carbon source. So in more than many occasions, if you look at old books where the Dutch aquariums, used to be a thing before the CO2 days, they will rely on many true aquatic plants, cabombas, tarpheliums, and many stem plants that they actually thrive just fine, but they will actually benefit from having slight alkaline water as a source of carbon. Nowadays, the plants that we get, if you notice, they come in little pots, right? And half the time, when you look at the plants, they look completely different above the water as they look underwater. And the reason why is because we are working with amphibian plants. And that's the reason why you see so many new species being distributed all over the world, because they just keep on coming, right? So the underwater growth you see on plants, I guess the easy way to put it is their survival mode. When the monsoons come or the flooding comes for 3 to 4 months of the year, these plants are going to get covered with water. And that is the reason why you will see them change in the foliage and looking the way they do when they grow underwater. One of the things that you notice at first when you start planting and you get the plants growing is that they will shoot out for the surface, and they will going to try to convert back into the emergent form. And the reason why is because plants are plants. They want plentiful atmospherical CO2 that it's, and they have free exposure of full UVB light so they can photosynthesize happily and they can be pollinated. And it's in our side to provide what they need to maintain them growing underwater. So water chemistry is very important. Know where the plants are coming from and adapt. For me, the perfect formula, is to have a KH of 4 or 1.2 to 3 milliequivalences and a GH of 2 milliequivalences of 6. That is a sweet spot for me because I can grow any plant in the book and then some, right? And by having that small amount of alkalinity in my water allows me to have a healthy bacterial activity for my filtration, and also is acting as a buffer when I'm using CO2. Because what happens when we use CO2? The minute it touches the water, it converts into carbonic acid. And that's the reason why you have a pH drop when you use CO2, right? So even if your KH is coming out of the tap at 8, you have to understand that you will not be counting bubbles to determine the amount of CO2 you're going to be using, because each tank is different, right? You have to get a pH and a test kit, KH test kit, and test your water. The more you test, the more you're aware of what you're doing, the less troubles you will have. Let's be honest, if you are not testing, you are guessing. And if you're guessing, you're going to end up with trouble sooner than later. So, how does the CO2 work? It's really simple. I'm going to go download my CO2 tables. They're all over the place. Just type in on Google CO2 tables. You'll get a bunch of them. Then test your KH and you will see, okay, at a KH of 4, I can bring the pH down to 6.8, and it will give me a concentration of, say, 32 milligrams per liter of CO2, which is plenty for the plants to thrive. So understand that. If you see somebody who lives in Arkansas, USA, and say, oh, no, I'm doing 3 bubbles per second, it's doing just fine, that's not going to work for you, right? If you are more advanced and you're prepping your water because flat out the water that you're getting is not good enough to grow the plants you want, then you can use reverse osmosis water and you can rely on our buffers, alkaline buffer and acid buffer. You can use them in equal amounts to reach the specific target if you're going without CO2, or you can use it individually to bring the pH and KH down and convert it into available CO2, or just to increase your alkalinity, to make that 4 kH target that I told you about. So, alkaline buffer for alkalinity, and acid buffer to bring your kH down and convert it into available CO2 for the plants. Most importantly, equilibrium, which is to me the one that I use the most. This will take care of your general hardness. General hardness has nothing to do with alkalinity. This is only going to tell you the concentration of calcium and magnesium in your water, right? And this is what helps fish and plants osmoregulate. So it's very important for you to use it, whether it's on a liquid form, like in the Aquavitro line, we have it on mineralized, or you can use it on the Seachem line, which is equilibrium. I don't have it here, but I'm sure it's back there. And it contains calcium, magnesium, iron, potassium, and manganese. So if you're using RODI water, this will actually provide all these essentials for the plants to thrive. And the next one is temperature. Only a few places in the world you have amphibian plants continuously growing underwater. I'm sure you've been to many. And you probably agree with me that the common denominator is the substrates are alkaline. There's always a certain point of alkalinity. But most importantly, the temperature is 72 Fahrenheit. If you want to help me with that one, 22 to 24 Celsius, I'll say. 22 to 24. Plants love the cooler water. When you bring up your temperature, and that's the reason why when people approach me and say like, hey, I want to have a planted tank with this, because it's not something that is natural. If you see discos where they come from, there's just like the desert. There's nothing. There's just warm water, sticks, and sand, and that's about it. Is it doable? Yes. Is it the best thing you can do if you're a beginner? I'll say stay away from it. Cooler water, photo period, very important. Don't go crazy with the light. A lot of people have the tendency of going for 10, 12 hours, and that's just crazy. Just imagine yourself, I don't know what kind of lights you guys use here, but they all generate a lot of power, especially LED lights, right? So when you have a planted tank and you have this much radiation hitting you down, imagine that you do this for 12 hours. It's like you standing up in the middle of summer, out there just sweating it off, waiting for the light to go out, right? It's not natural. So at the beginning, I like to start with a 6-hour photo period to 8-hour photo period at most, right? If you have one of these intelligent lights that you can do dawn and dusk and all that, well, power to you. But if you don't have it, don't overdo it. Just know when you're going to be home. Know when you can set the timer so you can enjoy the tank, rather than just have it going from 9 in the morning to 9 p.m. at night. It's not the best thing you can do. When it comes to light, very important. Plants, they thrive in the light that we despise the most. 6700 Kelvin is an eyesore for us, but the plants actually benefit and photosynthesize quite actively under these conditions. But anything from 8 to 10,000 Kelvin, it's perfect. And as far as using LED technology, which is what it's only available nowadays, I don't know how here is in Australia, but there's many stores in America that you can actually go and rent a PAR reader. Reef shops, they need it all the time. So if you go by reading the PAR, as long as on the first third of the bottom you have a reading of 50, then you can grow any ground cover in the book and then some. Your middle ground, you want it at 100 PAR. Yeah? On your top side, well, that's when you can go a little crazy. But 150 to 180, it will actually give you everything you need and then some, right? If you want to go by lumens, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, I will say 80 to 120 on the top, right? So just keep that in mind. It's very important. We tend to overlook and just say, oh, I'll take that light and just put it together. If you look at this tank, it's very wide. It's 55 centimeters wide. So if I am to just plant all these there, they're not going to make it. I will need 4 of these side by side to cover the entire tank, or a light that is strong enough to sustain the growth of the plants, right? So that's for lighting. All right, let's start aquascaping. So again, triangular design is going to be the heavy area. We're going to fade it down this way, negative space, well-defined foreground. So let's go. And if you have any questions, guys, please let me know. Another advice when we work with driftwood, the first thing you want to do is it buoyant? Is it going to float? Is it waterlogged? How long is it going to take? Should I glue it? Should I not? Well, my answer, if you really don't want to put up with going piece by piece, making sure that it floats or not, you can always glue it. Gluing is the easiest thing. Nowadays, is a million techniques. In America, a close friend of mine started using art glue, which is cyanoacrylate in gel form. I can tell that this piece of wood is going to float, so I'm going to I'm going to look at the contact points. So this is what you do at home, and you take your time. And I'm going to be generous. I'm going to make sure that I'm making contact with the wood, with the rock. And you set it and forget it. And this is going to be my anchor. And it's going to assure me that this is not going to take off like a rocket at the end, because I don't know if you ever done this before. In the past, it was pretty common that you will find a way to drill holes, put cable ties. God knows what we did. We just bent backwards, and you were satisfied with this. And by the time you were with the water all the way to the top, and you said yes, and you walked away for a glass of water, and you hear the boom, and the thing just rockets out of the tank, and it was horrible. So this will stop that from happening. That's the reason why I like it so much. And it's quick. Back in the days, we used to take the cigarette butts and the liquid cyanoacrylate and go piece by piece, and the fumes, and they get to your eyes, and you're twitching, and it's not good. Being exposed to chemicals is never good. And the same here. And for instance, all these pieces, if you are thinking about competing and make it look more pretty, I'm going to get some gloves, and I'll show you a little trick that you can do. That way you hide that spot. That it can be an eyesore. If you have a very complex structure, you're going to have spots all over the place. So in order for you to prevent that, the glue can stay there fresh for a while. It will not set. So you can grab a small piece of soil, and you can just break it and cover it, and then you spray on top of it. It will moist, the accelerator. I don't care, but anyway, you take your time and you do this at home. Otherwise, we can be here until tomorrow. You also want to take your time when you use accelerators, because it bonds immediately on the outside, but it slowly works its way in. So it will take about 10 to 15 minutes before it's nicely set. So don't get anxious. Aquascaping is about patience and timing. So again, you don't have to put the structure together in one day. Walk away. If you are doing this professionally, you need to get a camera, and you need to measure dead center and take hundreds of pictures and look at them on a large monitor, and look at them time and again, because our eyes will lie to us. It can be pleasant for you to be looking at something that does say, oh, this is good. I'm feeling good about it. But when you plant it, when you fill it up with water and you look at the picture, it's going to be like, whoa. So these are more advanced techniques. Also, the size of the aquariums. For advanced aquascaping, they're always used. You will notice that they use from one side to the next. And the whole reason why is because when you add water to an aquarium, what's the immediate effect you get here? A mirror, right? So they don't want that. You want to create something that is going to look like it's continuously growing. If you leave an empty space like we're doing today, which is good for nature aquarium but not for competition, you're going to have a mirror here. So if you were to take a picture, dead center, like I told you before, is going to mirror the structure we have here and there. But if you have it put together in a way that is using the glass panes and fade away all the way down to the bottom, to the top, using the entire frame and shy under here, and you're going to get an excellent rating when it comes to the judges. All right. So as you can see, I'm not even trying to do much here. It's super simple. I borrow this? Thank you. And before I regret it, I'm going to start removing the tags now. Is anybody here competing? Aquascaping? No? You are?
First time.
First time ILPCL or?
Yes.
How do you do?
Just a small one, like that.
But it's last year or this year?
No, I just.
Oh, so it's for this year.
Weekend first time.
Oh, nice. Congratulations.
No.
Go for it, guys. It's crazy to see that. I have friends that they start doing this like less than a decade ago, and they're making 70,000, 80,000 American dollars a year competing, winning contests. It's crazy. I travel too much, and I have birds. I don't like competing anymore. There. So I'm using Sikkim Reef glue. We have Flourish glue, and it comes in a smaller package. When I have a big project, I use this instead. And I actually use the Flourish glue for the planting, for my epiphytic plants, for my mosses, for my liverworts. But since I can get more, I can just keep on working rather than being opening and another one and another one. So growing plants, again, when you rely on aqua soils, you're going to have a window that's going to allow you to relax the first 3-4 months, right? Soon after that, you can start noticing that the plants are not growing as fast as they should, and more than likely they will develop deficiencies. Even more so when you are working with designs like an Iwagumi behind you. It's a very minimalistic approach, so the plant mass compared to the amount of water, light, CO2 is not as much as a tank that is fully planted. Ideally, for a beginner, you should plant heavily. I mean heavily, tip to top, like leave no space in between. In that way, the plants will grow evenly all together. You can manage the trimmings and create the contours by trimming, but this is more advanced. So you have to rely on a good water chemistry. So again, your water chemistry, learn it, master that, because it's going to help you a great deal. But most importantly, understand the plant needs. Do you know why we have to add CO2 to the tanks? 79% of any plant requirement is carbon, is the source of life. So that's the reason why we have to do CO2 in a planted tank. Even if you have, we went to a store yesterday that they have a massive river-sized tank that is, I don't know, probably 3 meters long, and the water moves really fast. And the first thing you notice is that the plants are doing really well. But you look at the underwater growth and struggles, and the only reason why it is not taking off like a rocket is because the agitation is creating copious amounts of oxygen and is depleting the water from CO2. In nature, CO2 is abundant, and when you have these large bodies of water, the plants actually will benefit from it. If you look at footage of, say, Bonito, Brazil, you should Google that one, by the way, you will actually see echinodoras that they're 1.5 meter, 80 tall, growing underwater, and they're actively photosynthesizing because they're exposed to sunlight, water movement, and continuous gas exchange. So they get the CO2. You cannot do that in a tank, even if it's 5 meters long. You cannot do that. So that's the reason why we have to add CO2. So 79% of the requirements is going to be CO2. Are there any other alternatives? Yes. We at Seachem have Seachem Excel, and this is an organic source of carbon for the plants, right? It's a photosynthetic intermediary that will provide the plants with a source of carbon that will help them photosynthesize, just like when we add CO2 to the water. When to use it? Anytime you want. Is it an algaecide? No, it's not. And I'm sure you already heard that. Or if you do 3 times the dose, you will kill the algae. Please don't do that. The product is designed to provide a source of organic carbon for the plants, and that's about it. If you follow the directions as the product is specified to be used, you will be happy because you will see benefits. And the reason why people think that it was designed to fight algae is because they actually overload those and they end up making a mess. Can you use it to treat a tank? Yes, you could. If you have something along these lines and, I don't know, life happens, and you come back home and one day you see black spots happening here and there and here and there, and the week after is a little puff of BBA algae, and you let it go and it will just get out of hand and it's horrible. And it's, why do you get the algae? First, again, test. If you're not testing, you're guessing. There is always a consequence for algae to happen, and it's usually an imbalance of microelements, and this is when the step 2 comes. So first need is cover, CO2, we understand that one, we're going to move to the next, microelements. Microelements, NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Most people is severely allergic to these because they relate them with algae. No, they are needed in large concentrations. That's the reason why they're called macroelements, right? A concentration in between 10 to 20 milligrams per liter of nitrates, 0.5 to 1 milligram per liter of phosphates, and 8 to 15% of potassium, it's more than enough to provide the plants with every single need that they need, they need to thrive. What's important here is understand what you're growing here, so you can make the proper arrangements. Some plants may only need a concentration of 10 to 0.5 to 8. So you play with the numbers until you fine-tune them to the need of your aquariums. But they're essential, they're important. If you have one too much nitrogen and you're lacking phosphorus, you will get algae, filamentous algae. If you are lacking phosphorus, you will get green spot algae. If your aquarium is not properly cared for, and you have a load of nitrates and absent phosphates and close to no potassium, then the BBA will happen. So there is always a reason behind why the algae is happening. And it boils down to 3 things. A lack of carbon, an imbalance in between nitrogen and phosphorus. Always. And if you add crazy photoperiods, very high temperatures, it will just make things even worse. But again, NPK, concentrations 10 to 20 on the nitrates, 0.5 to 1 on the phosphates, and 8 to 15 when it comes to potassium. How can you know what you're doing? Well, that's easy. A nitrate test. Nitrate equivalence, you can test for it, and then you know your concentrations. I know what I'm doing now. You stop guessing, then you know how much to add. We have calculators at Seachem that you can access. You can enter the values of the amount of water you have, the target concentration you want, and it will actually tell you exactly in milliliters how much to add. and the same goes for phosphate. Sadly, for potassium, it's chemically similar to calcium, so it's really hard to test. So unless you have a professional water test done, it's very difficult to detect. But on the other hand, potassium is probably the easiest of them all, and it will never give you any problems. So fire up, you'll be fine. Then we have the microelements. And microelements are needed. I personally like to do them in alternative doses. I like to do macros in one day, and I like to do micros in a different day. And depending on what I have is the times that I dose per week, right? And the whole reason why is because if I am to do these all-in-one formulas that they're becoming very popular nowadays, there is a downside to it. When you have these all-in-one formulas, you lose track of what you're doing. So if you develop a problem that is related to a phosphate deficiency, what are you going to do? Are you going to add more of the all-in-one to fix it? You're going to create an even bigger imbalance. And that's the reason why we at Seekem have two lines that cover all these macro and micro elements, and you can actually, we will more than love for you to use all our products, but you can actually adapt, you know, that missing link with our products to revert a deficiency or a problem in your aquarium. So that's the reason why Seekem has been around for 45 years. It's easy to use. We have all the information and the science behind to back it up, and you will always have somebody behind the phone that will answer your questions, will call you back, or will send you an email with all the information and the links for the calculators you need. So don't be afraid to learn. You need to get used to this, because having a planted tank is more than just taking the picture for Instagram. It's a complex thing. Even reefers, when they talk about plants, they say like, no, too much. They like simple. So it can be complex. Again, nothing wrong with getting some testing and getting used to it, because it will only make you a better aquascaper at the end of the day. And microelements, I like to do alternative doses, because if you do phosphates and iron the same day, they will precipitate and they make your water cloudy. So do one day macros, one day micros, monitor your tank, and once a week do a water change. That's something that you will never get away from it when it comes to a planted tank. A water change weekly is a must. If you're doing this commercially, at least every 10 days, they need to be serviced. You need to flush all the residual nutrition that lingers in the water that is not utilized by the plants, because if you do not, well, guess what? It's going to end up in an imbalance or an algae issue. Now, let's carry on. Any questions so far, guys? Now that I'm planting here, gluing. Come on, guys, talk to me.
Luis,
Sir.
one of the issues in Australia that I've discovered is in Europe and in the States, you're indoors 8 to 9 months of the year. We're outdoors 8 to 9 months of the year. So the conditions in the southern hemisphere for plants and, like you said, temperature before, even with fish, people keep their fish at 26, 27 degrees. Yeah. And they struggle. Like I say, plants are much more comfortable. 22, 24. When we have our hot summers, people got to realise it'll turn plants to mush. Yeah.
Can you keep them at higher temperatures? Most definitely. They metabolize much more though. So you will more than likely have to increase the amount of dosings, but you can only determine this by monitoring and testing continuously. The minute you see that the temperature is fluctuating on the upper side, then you need to start compensating for, for what's missing. And one more thing, you have to understand what is that you're doing. Do you want a planted tank or you want a fish tank with plants? Make up your mind. And I'm I mean that in the most friendliest way, because if you are deciding that you have a shoal of 27 Ultimate Angels and 500 Cardinal Tetras, and your dream is to have some green in the bag, well, let me burst your bubble, but it's not going to happen. So just define what you want. It will make your life easier. That's the beauty of the aquarium world. We have a niche for everyone. If you like catfish, there is a whole association for that. You have the rainbows, you have the guppies, you have the plants. So just understand what you want and stick to it. So we also have trace elements, and trace elements is probably one of the hardest deficiencies to detect, especially in advanced aquascaping or planted aquarium keeping, because they are needed in very minute amounts. But when the plants are lacking these, they will develop all kind of very unusual deficiencies that they can easily be reverted by adding trace elements. Trace elements, they oxidate and precipitate very quickly in the water, so when you dose, you can actually dose with confidence. It's hard to overdose, but the plants will actually start reverting. So at least once a week, I strongly advise for you to get trace elements and dose it to your planted tank, because they're crucial also for plant development. All right, let's start putting some rocks in the back to anchor this structure, and then we finish the top. All right, so it looks slightly different at the beginner, compared to the first design, but I think now it's more defined, that triangular design that I wanted to get. There is a lot of gaps in between. You see it? That can be an eyesore when it comes to photography, but this is when your skills planting come to hand, because guess what, plants grow, right? And especially if you do things right. So you have to think ahead of time, where are you going to place your plants? You can pack it up with plants, and more than likely what you're doing by adding, and don't get me wrong, you have to plant heavily, but you don't want to tilt the boat too much, because then you're going to have something that is going to be chaotic, if you know what I mean. You want to give the perfect spacing for the plants to follow. I'm going to get into more technical details about the rhizomes that is completely overlooked, and every time I see competition tanks, I notice this mistake all the time, and this is something that we don't do because we grew up with it. But one of the biggest mistakes I've seen is that when people is working with epiphytic plants, anubias, bucephalandras, or even microsorums, you look at the rhizomes. Have you ever seen the microsorum rhizome or the bulbitis rhizome? It curls out, right? So the same goes for the microsorum. The microsorum will actually just take a hold of everything around it. That's what they do. The anubias, they have a rhizome and they just follow the light, right? So I've seen in tanks that they actually put the rhizomes facing towards the back. So the plant naturally will look for the light. It cannot go backwards. It cannot just do a U-turn and turn around. It's going to start creeping up on the thing, and they look leggy and they look inconsistent. So think ahead. That's why I say break it into threes, because when you start just doing everything at once, you're going to get overwhelmed, you're going to get tired, and you're going to end up making mistakes. So just think ahead, because these little details is what's going to give you a lot of points when it comes to competition, if that's your thing.
Luis, how long have you been aquascaping for?
I mean, I've been keeping plants for 41 years now, and my first serious escape after seeing Mr. Amano work in 2001 was in 2002. So I guess a put together drawing, getting what I needed by the book 2001.
And what did your first aquascape ever look like?
I got in AGA first place in Best of Show.
Wow. Well done.
Yeah, and that was after seeing a man of work for the first time. It just changed everything. So I competed from 2001 and I stopped in 2006. Yeah, my oldest boy was born in 2001, so it was very difficult at the beginning, but I managed and I kept on entering, and ILPCL, I think the lowest I ever ranked, it was like 77, and my best ranking was 34.
Well done.
And I did a couple for first, second, honor mentions at AGA, but then my daughter came to, and that was it. Like that, she was born in 2006, and that was bye-bye for me. I just couldn't do it anymore. But plants, wow, I've been doing this forever, man. Forever. I cannot help myself. My grandmother was a big plant person, and I grew up in the Pacific side of Mexico, so I was very fortunate to have a reef in the backyard, or the ocean, and the rainforest in the back. So I will go collecting echinodoros. We had every single poecilid in the book that you can probably think of. It was within reach. We have a lot of physidid mosses. They were challenging because I used to live by the ocean, so the water, it was always warm, so physidens didn't do well. So I experimented with every single plant that I was able to get locally, and then within travels to other cities and whatnot, I started growing, I think my first serious aquatic plant that I got in 1983, 84, it was a cryptocorin. And that was to me like the most precious plant in the whole wide world. And look now, I mean, they're the easy plants. All right, so most of the rocks I'm going to place in the back. This is going to anchor the structure. It's going to keep it from floating. And I'm always very careful, that goes for you. When I start filling up the tank very slowly, I always keep, especially this type, the round ones. And I just look for the nooks and crevices. If I see any, because the beauty of this wood is that the water locks very quickly. And if I was working with manzanita or anything like that, that takes forever. But this is fast. This is water logging, I will say 72 hours sometimes. It's fast, it's really fast. And unlike other wood, I like to use these for demonstrations because this one is very forgiving. It doesn't give you that white fuzz, the fungi that you get when you use azalea or spiderwood, I think it's called. Yeah, and you know the mess that can be, if you've done this before. So this is friendly for beginners. It's really easy to use. The contour of the wood is really nice. I mean, look at it. We haven't barely done anything. It's already looking decent. So,
How much do you think about maintenance when you do it? Like, how easy is it?
I always keep that in mind. And maintenance is very important because we have the tendency of worrying too much about fertilization, and we overlook two very important things. That is distribution of CO2 and filtration. Exactly. And usually at the end of the presentation, but since you already brought it up, I have the intake and the return, on the side. And the whole reason why is because we're dealing with a rectangular structure. If I am to go old-fashioned, put an intake here and a return here, you're going to have half the tank with a dead spot. When you have the pipes on the side, you can put a drop of dye or a dust of equilibrium you will see it going round and round. So the distribution of the water is evenly. So I like to have the intake and the return in front, and to have the CO2 installed if I'm using a diffuser. Like tanks like these, they're probably better off by using a reactor. But if you must use a diffuser, it will be on the opposite end of the aquarium, so the water current picks it up and takes it along. One of the common tricks when it comes to aquascaping and using diffusers is that every 5 weeks you swap them when you do the maintenance. So you move the CO2 to the opposite side and you swap the pipes here. That way you can ensure that you will have even growth along the tank. And filtration is very important. I don't care who you follow when it comes to aquascaping, big aquascaping galleries, Horizon Aquatics, Green Aqua in Hungary, who else? Aquarium Design Group in Houston, Aquabase in Brazil, you name it. They rely on biological media. Planted aquariums are very dirty. Aquatic plants, they generate a lot of nitrogenous waste. So you need biological media that is going to keep up with the waste. And Matrix by Seachem is probably the best material you will ever find. It is designed that each liter of Matrix have 700 square meters of surface area, and that's not the best part. The best part is that if you're doing maintenance, like if you have accounts that you actually, because they're your clients, you can only visit, say, every 10 days or so, the media is designed to grow aerobic bacteria on the outer layer. The porous nature of Matrix, the grooves that go deep in it, they actually are perfect for growing anaerobic bacteria because of the water restriction that naturally occurs. So let's say that you hire somebody to service the aquariums and they're not actually keeping up with the maintenance, or you have a customer that is not exactly the most active, is rather lazy, and they just neglect the filter. Well, even when this happens, the fact that the media is designed to grow both bacteria, even when the water restriction is compromised, you will still denitrify very efficiently. And that's the reason why Matrix is so good. I use loads of it. And I also rely at the beginning on Matrix Carbon. The first week, the first month, I use the entire capacity of the chamber with Matrix. Then I do a couple bags, the 100 ml Matrix Carbon. And after the 4th week, I open the filter, remove, I change the pad, just any fine pad is fine, and I swap it for Purigen. And Purigen will help me cope with any tannins that are coming out from the wood. It's a scavenging media that actively remove soluble nitrogenous waste. So it's all in all perfect for aquascaping because it will keep your water so clear that the light will penetrate properly all the way down to the areas where you want to grow your ground covers, especially for those who are aquascaping and you want to have that even growth. So that to me is the first combination and the one and only one I use. So it's Matrix. First 4 weeks I use Matrix Carbon, a couple bags of it. Past the first month, I take them out and I replace them with Purigen, and every time I service the tank, which is 4 to 6 weeks, I always use aquarium water. I rinse my media. I use media bags, and I just fill them up with the Matrix depending on the size of the aquarium, and I just take them out, get a bucket of water, 1, 2, 3, and you put them back in the system and you're good to go. And you will never have any issues. I cannot emphasize enough how important is the turnout. It should be 5 to 1 regarding on the filter you use. I like to use canisters for tanks this size and up because you can actually use much more media in it. But even the smaller systems, like we have Tidals, that little bag that you see there, it's more than enough to handle 110 gallons of water, which over over. So you're saying that's how efficient that thing is. Any situations that they're troubling you that you find difficult to understand that I may be able to help?
So do you find the matrix carbon works well when you're setting up your tank the first few weeks?
Yes.
And getting rid of that ammonia?
Yeah, because it removes copious amounts of organics, even more so than, and it just takes them all out. It's very aggressive, so that's the only reason why at the beginning, when everything is beginning to, you have loads of organics coming from the substrates and the wood beginning to decompose, because at the end of the day, it's a thing, we like the 3-foot, but it will decompose. So it just helps you break in the tank much more efficiently, and Purigen will just take it along the way. It's just like, the cherry on top of the cake. Yeah. I heard that so many times. Just to give you an example, and thank goodness I work for Seachem, but I have shy under 140 liter tank. There are 3 bags of Purigen in a 2215 Eheim. You're saying, and I'll show you a picture of the tank later. No. It will make your water clear, yes. And by doing so, the plants will actually photosynthesize much more better, and they will actually intake the nutrition in a much efficient way as well. It's just water clarity at the end of the day. So you see your plants pearling.
The experts
Well, yeah.
they're always using. I thought that's.
But if you see your plants pearling, sir, that means you're doing things right.
Yeah.
Don't ever think that because they're pearling too much, they're suffering, because it doesn't happen. Sir? Oh, I saw you go like this. Never mind. Oh, perfect. Yeah. So, like I said, we have 4 sizes for the titles: the 35, the 55, 75, and 110, and they all come with matrix. So you can actually run a planted tank successfully using titles, no problem. Again, if you're aquascaping and you have something that beautiful, and hang in the back filter may not be the best choice, as efficient as it may be, right? So you got to think ahead of time. What is that you want?
A lot of the experts say you can never over.
No. Again,
filtrate.
the book says a turnout of 5 times the volume of the tank every hour is more than enough. I do 20 if I can. It's just, again, you've seen the water run where the plants are. I mean, you can hardly stand up. You'll be surprised. A Canadian fellow ichthyologist helped me with his name. He explores South America mostly. He's a beautiful book. He's got a beautiful book. He's got one of the coolest, Oliver Lucanus. Oliver Lucanus. If you follow him on YouTube, and because he's a scientist, this is the type of people that I like to follow. Listen to this gentleman. The way he explained how the water movement is important in an aquarium is just clear as water. It's just you will see the benefits of not only the fish health, the plant health, when you have water moving. What you probably think is too much, it's enough to make them happy. All right. But now we have a structure that we can plant around. So let's do the final touches here, and we may touch up in glue at the end, but it's pretty much where I want it. Now, this is something that I've been going back and forth with a good friend, Luca Galarraga, which is actually one of the top aquascapers in the world, one of the top 10 consistently for the past 4 years. I noticed that in Brazil, when we start using open foregrounds, I used to be like really conscious on making a perfect barrier so my substrate didn't mix, and I used to get all worked up about it. But at the end of the day, once you have the plants growing, they will act as a dam. They will secure you know, everything. So if you have a little spottings here and there of soil, don't mind them, leave them be. Once the plants root, they're going to go away. You can siphon them out and you can carry on. Yeah, so if you really want to make sure that nothing is going to mix, take your sweet time, make a barrier, put the rocks where they belong, and then start doing it. But what we're doing today, we're just going to make the exact same thing. We're just going to start from behind and back, and we're going to just continue the slope with sand. And that way we'll secure the back from collapsing, and with the planting, it will actually just make sure that it will not fall down. So I know I want to have some foreground plants here, so I'm going to make sure that I have enough around. In that way, we can have some Eleucharis. So if I may get any decoration sand you want on the tan side, and that's another good thing that you can do. Whenever you start getting OCD and you get that piece, and it's like, no, I need to put it in. And you put it back in and you walk away and you bring it back again, walk away. Give it a night. The next day, more than likely, you can just put it where it belongs, and it was going to take you 1 second. The more you start obsessing over things, it's going nowhere. Right. So now I want to play archaeologist, and I'm just going to remove the dust. So again, it's going to mix up. Yes. Is it going to be a nicer for you if you're OCD? Oh, most definitely. But again, plants grow, and it's as easy as siphoning out, you know, the excess. Okay, now I'm going to use, oh, this is quite big. Can I get that one there? Yeah.
The whole thing?
The whole thing. Thanks, sir. So you can see how much is going to change. Again, we're just putting this together on the fly. It's nothing too complicated. It's nothing too fancy. And yet it's gonna look very nice. Every time you look at the creek or the river edge, you will see the transition from the soil, the trunks, the wood, whatever you want to call it, to the rubble, to the sand. It's just nature. That's why we call it a nature aquarium. One of the things that, you know, the old school people used to emphasize a lot was walk outside, stop Instagram. You live in one of the most beautiful countries in the world. Go look at the creeks. Just don't get you up by one of those things you have here. But it's funny, my mother called me when I thought, oh, I'm going to Australia. I was like, don't get close to the water. Everybody thinks that you're going to get chewed up by either a saltwater crocodile or a great white shark.
I was swimming with a great white shark.
Was that?
I was swimming with a great white shark about a month back.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You know,
60 kilometers from here.
I was in Cape Town last summer, and they had the cage thing,
Yeah.
and I thought about it because it wasn't too bad, but I don't know, man. I think Discovery Channel is enough.
I do that in Mexico, no?
We have them in the north, in the Guadalupe Island border with San Diego, California. That's where they spotted the biggest female documented, which I think passed away recently, I think. But the thing was massive. I forgot what size it was. Okay, so how does it look from a distance? I haven't even walked back. I want something somewhere there. You can always, it's right here. You can always add a little bit of water for comfort, but as long as you have a spray bottle and you prevent the plants from dehydrating, that's more than enough. So as you plant one area, move on to the next, and so on and so forth. When I plant the entire aquarium, I usually start foreground to background. In this particular occasion, I'm going to start middle ground, I'm going to touch up the foreground, and I'm going to finish with the background. So let's get going. Something that is very exciting to me, this may sound silly to you, but doing what I love today is my day that I'm done aquascaping in the 5 continents with Australia. So I'm really excited about it. It's a nerd thing to do, but hey. So, glue, a little bit on the roots, set it and forget it. This will cure very fast when it comes in contact with water. It will bond immediately.
Can you use it wet? Can you pull like
Completely,
drop it
but
wet?
yes, you can have it with you
I'll just, if you're going to add something later to the tank.
when you do the water change.
Can you-
Drop the water line, glue it, fill it up. If you
Can you
go
pull
like
it-
this,
Can you pull the rock out with the glue and stick
Of
it
course.
back in?
yeah. The thing is that, I mean, you can even sink your hand in the water, but I mean, it's going to get
It's not going to affect the water parameters or anything.
No, not at all. It's non-toxic. But it will not look pretty, I tell you that much. Now, what I need to modify, correct, add, I found it. There you are. No wonder you were wobbling. The best thing to do is, when you schedule the water change, make sure that you have everything ready, get your glue, get your plants, drop the water level, correct the mistake or add to it, fill it up. So the old trick for nature aquarium style is that always work with odd numbers when it comes to groupings of plants. So if you're going to use epiphytic plants, go 3, 5, 7, 9, so on and so forth. And the same goes for your ferns, because when you do, say you have, oh, there goes my new shoes. Oh well.
Put a plant on you.
I know. When you have pairs, it's just break the balance. It's no longer natural. So yeah, it just looks odd. So but you will see it changing before your eyes just by adding plants. That's the beauty of aquascaping. You know, you even if you don't have enough materials, you're gonna end up with, you know what? There. I'm not gonna get stuck somewhere. So I was very happy. I hunted Balisneria nana. There's two species that made it to America, the red and butter green one and the tiger one. 10 years took me to find them. And I finally got them in about 10 days ago. And I'm finally going to start propagating my Anubias nana from Australia, because the ones I got before, for whatever reason, I wasn't able to keep them. So now I have the two variants that come from here, and I'm super excited because when I go home, they should be taking off like wildfire.
Do you have a preference for layout styles? Do you prefer like classic nature style? Or
Classic nature styles. You know, I've done a couple dioramas, and I enjoy them, to be honest with you. It's just the lifespan is very short.
Yeah.
You can only get so much out of it. So,
High maintenance.
yeah. Well, I don't know if you remember when all started, it was a lot of mosses.
Yeah.
It was much green than anything, in some super structured, you know, complex layout, and you go line by line, other mosses and everything, and it's fun and all, but you know where mosses grow. You will like mosses until you don't, and they can take over a tank in no time. So
Do you still prefer liverwort?
I prefer who?
Liverwort?
I still don't hear you.
Liverwort.
Liverworts, oh yeah, completely. Ricardia, Cremidifolia is to me the best. The way it grows, the way it just consistently keeps on adding to the structures is much more manageable. It's not invasive. Wasser Tang, it's got a place here and there. Monocelane tenerum is another one that can be used, but I stick to Ricardia. Ricardia is the one I like. All right, so we're gonna have hair grass. And the beauty of hair grass is that being a ground cover is going to run along the edges, and it's going to give the same effect you see when you're looking at a creek. See, didn't go anywhere. The story of my life. All right. I'm a big fan. Let's go back to the hair grass. So, again, we're going to start with the broadleaf. We're going to narrow it down to the fine stems. In the negative space, we're going to make a transition from Eleucharis acicularis, from back to front, to Eleucharis pusilla. Okay, so now you can see the change, and let's start with where are the Cryptocorns? Let's do groupings of 3, and that's gonna, there you go, perfect like that. All right, so Cryptocorin Wendetti Brown? Yes. Now, one trick, Cryptocorins, they actually thrive under more alkaline substrates. They will adapt, but if you really want to transition the plants easily. We have a mineral substrate. It's called onyx sand, and it's very rich in calcium, magnesium, and it also contains carbonates. So if you put a small layer when you're planting with aqua soil and you're going to do a tank that is going to have cryptocurrents, you can do a small layer under of onyx sand, and this will neutralize the acidity at the root system, and it will provide the calcium and magnesium to the cryptocurrents that they needed in copious amounts, and it will actually make them thrive and grow better. Because they melt. When you put them in, they will just disappear, and it takes a month and a half to 2 months before you start seeing the new. Well, when you use onyx sand, it's great. So you can get the small 3 kilo bags and just stock them. Just whoever is going to do the cryptocurrents. This substrate is so versatile that you can use it for macroalgae, you can use it for tanganyikans, you can use it for a planted tank. If you want to have something that is going to have Vallisneria nana only, or Sagittarius, any aquatic, Cabombas, go with that. It will just look awesome.
Small ones, big ones.
This is perfect. It's quite big, so I'm going to go by hand here. Let's see what you got. Yeah.
When we plant crypts, we like to cut the roots down as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually started doing a trick that Oliver Knott is doing. He bonsai them. He uses like these small vials, glass made, and he fills them up with aqua soil. And I believe he's using cryptocurrent patchy for this because it's by nature smaller. So what he does, he fills it up with the soil. Then he put in the cryptocurrent patchy, and when the plant is in, he'll just completely cut the tops. So the vial just sticks out with like whatever stems are left from the plant, and he just places them in the spot where he wants them to grow, and then you get tiny little leaves, and it's really nice. All right, Ludwigia ovalis, yes. All right, so we're going to do a small trick here. When it comes to stem plants and planting without scissors, please. We're gonna start here, and we're gonna lay the stems toward the front, right? So when we flood the aquarium, they're gonna rise up with the water level, because if we just plant them widely, they're gonna get tangled up, and more than likely you're gonna start having floaters all over the place. So when you're home and you have the time, I will usually grab every stem and I will peel off the bottoms just so they go in a lot easier. But they're going to be fertilizer today. So, stem plants, beginner friendly, something that you should do if this is your first time planting, because they grow fast, they take a lot of nutrition, and they will fight algae naturally by just doing what they do. When it comes to stems and aquascaping, it's very simple. So you have a stem, right? So when we're going to trim the plants, you're going to again divide it in thirds, the first third and the second third. So always your first trim, when the plants reach the surface, is going to be at the first third of the stem. You're going to follow the contour of the structure, and that's how you're going to define the growth. That's how you see those beautiful lush bunches when you open Instagram and whatnot. So after you trim, the hormone of growth of the plant, it's on the first third, right? So from there you're going to get 2 to 3 stems, and that's going to expand, and it's going to make the tank look more lush. By the time they reach all the way to the surface, then you're going to make the third and last trim, and that's where the money shot comes from. You are at the third level, and then you're going to cut there, and when they recover, that's when you're gonna get the beautiful shot with this lush growth everywhere in every single corner, and it's gonna look beautiful. How can you improve this? You can use Flourish Advanced. Flourish Advanced contains 5 phytohormones that are crucial for development of roots, stems, leaves, growth, and overall assimilation of nutrients. So that's something that you can do in between trimmings. I personally like to use it when I'm working with a lot of stem plants and I'm done, with a trim. Then I like to incorporate the dosing of Advanced for at least 10 days. And once I see the growth happening again, I stop, and then I carry on with my fertilization, and then I get this beautiful coloration on my plants. So another tip that you can do.
Just for everybody's knowledge, Ross, how many stems do you normally plant in a go?
I'm going to be honest with you, it's usually ideal to do 3 to 5 stems per plug. 3 is more than enough. Again, not everybody have, the money to buy a gazillion plants at once. So what you can do, and because this is something that is commonly done, is again, allow your plants to grow. You're going to do your trim at the first third. The excess trimmings, you can use them to fill up the gaps. And therefore you're going to create a more lush look. And just think about how much they will multiply by doing this. So, and every time you trim, there's going to be a much more heavy presence of the plants, to the point that you will not even know what to do with them because you're going to have so many of them. As far as technique goes, when it comes to competition, I am a huge fan of Luca Galarraga. I am a huge fan of Josh Sim. I am a huge fan of Matty Maines and Takayuki Fukada, and from the States, Stephen Chung. Stephen Chung is probably the best aquascaper we have in America, and I follow him because he's really good. And if you really want to learn more about advanced aquascaping, follow him too, because he's very well spoken. You can connect points when he talks. It's like, oh, so now he's back in America. He was for the longest time in Japan. That's the reason why he became so good. He is part of the aquascaping team of Takayuki Fukada and Mashi Ono. He's one of them. So the guy is good. You may want to follow him. That's it on top of my head, really.
Hey, Luis.
Sorry. Who? There.
When you're setting up a new planted tank, or if you break one down and you're restarting, replanting it all, how soon after planting do you start adding fertilizer, liquid fertilizer?
Perfect question. Well, again, this is when your knowledge and your experience come in. You have to look at your plants. The explosive growth you get with any aqua soil is going to eventually stop. So you have to stay vigilant, and whenever you see that the plants, they're not pearling as actively as before, whenever you see that the coloration start not being consistent and you start seeing different growth patterns where they look a little stunt, then I strongly suggest for you to start conducting your water testing. Aquascapers do this before taking the final shot, is depleting the plants from nitrogen, so they trigger this response of red coloration. But Hygrophila it's so simple, man.
I
It's
can
like,
grow it easy, but not getting it.
and well, you need something that generates more power. That's all there is. I don't know, what kind of lights are you using?
I'm using the Movable Plant 3.0.
Play with the light, add another one. Adding another light doesn't mean that you have to have them both at full strength all the way. You can use a timer and have the second light to come in, say 3 hours after the first one comes in, and have them run together, and the second light, turn it off 1 hour before the second one goes off. You'll see it will change. All right, so now is yet another Rotala rotundifolia. This is Rotala rotundifolia green. It's a very bright green plant. It will balance this bright section, it will transition down to here, and I think I'm on 1, 2, 3, 4 Ludigia arquata. It's going to do a nice transition and balance of the colors that I already have. It's going to be more like an autumn dream type of aquarium, and yet we're going to have a splash of green because this plant is beautiful, and it's going to complement the tank quite well. So what I'm looking here is to have from the first third of the aquarium down to my corner heavy plant growth, that by trimming I want to make the contour follow the structure and make sense in the back. So it's going to be a multi-layer yet organized grow pattern in the back. So I have almost equal amounts here. This is going to be a little bit more than this, and this is going to be less because I want this as an accent. I don't want to have a wall of green. I just want that splash of green that will enhance, and then I'm going to just do that one, and the secularis here just to finish it.
So what plants do you got from left to right? That one with that?
Ludwigia ovalis, Ludwigia inclinata red, Rotala rotundifolia, you said colorata, Rotala rotundifolia green, Ludwigia arquata, Eleucharis acicularis at the very end. So that's going to transition all the way to the front with the Eleucharis pusilla, so it's going to give you that river look effect. And again, this tank may not be even suited for competition, but if you keep this thing together and you actually bring it up to completion, it will be a beautiful tank that you can enjoy. Aquascaping is something that takes passion, time, hours of work, and it cannot be put together on the fly, unfortunately. But what we have going on today is information that I want you to take home and use. I mean, I can spend 6 hours in front of a tank just gluing things together, making a very complex, amazing structure, and then you're gonna go home and say, okay, now I know how to glue sticks.
Yeah.
I want you to take home tools that you can use to your benefit. That's the reason why we cover substrates. That's the reason why we cover water chemistry. That's the reason why we cover supplementations. So if you master these 3 things, I don't care what you put together, and you increase your plant knowledge, read about plants, understand your plants. Aquarium Plants by Castleman is probably one of the best books you will ever buy. I strongly suggest you get that book. It will actually tell you the in and outs of every single plant that you have available today, and you can plan ahead. If you're new, if you're not sure what you want to do, but you have somehow an idea, you can consult. You can ask people with experience. I mean, you have a couple legends here in Australia. So use that to your benefit. That's why it's so important to be active in clubs, to be part of presentations, interact, ask questions, and find out the reasons why. Don't just read things that sometimes don't even make sense. You know, it's probably the best thing that you can do. It's the best way to help others and understand what you're doing for the benefit of learning and your aquariums. Because once you get more used to this, you're just going to be so happy. Because it's not that complicated. We make it complicated. All right. Last stem but not least is going to be Ludwigia arquata. I love this plant, by the way. This is an awesome plant. I didn't hear the last part. I'm sorry.
So like when you're measuring
Yep.
the water of the tank,
Mm.
you like go by the tank size, or you just measure after you put the hardscape and substrate?
Good point. Actually, thank you for bringing that up. When we buy an aquarium, we say, okay, this is a 65-gallon aquarium. That's what I'm taking home. Or, well, let's say liters, 400 liters aquarium, and that's what I'm taking home. Okay, everything is fun and games until You put a big old boulder in there. Think of water displacement, right? This is very important. And when you fill up the tank for the first time, count how many liters are you putting in. And the whole reason why is because if you are aware of the amount of water you have in the tank, it will actually allow you to dose precisely for that amount of water you have. So there will no fault. There will be no guessing, I think I have somewhere in the neighborhood of 380 liters. No. If you use a boulder that big, more than likely you're going to have probably even less than half. So it's only good science. Logbook everything you do. Test, get used to it. When you fill up the tank, know exactly the amount of water you have. So when you start dosing, it's done correctly and you're not just wondering and scratching your head, oh, I have algae, you know. All right, so this is the last stem. I'm going to move to Secularis, which is here. And then we can go have dinner. So this one is much taller. This is going to be my transition from my negative space because I don't want anything here, but I do want plants here. I don't want to have a bare spot. That is not going to do me any good. And this plant grows very, very quickly, and it will run towards the front and it will meet with the smaller version, so it will create a very nice and natural transition. So that's what we're doing back here.
That's just normal hair grass, is it?
Yes, this is your Eleucharis acicularis, the bread and butter we have had for years and years, and this is Pusilla.
How do you actually trim that plant once it grows tall?
Ideally you shouldn't, but if you're doing an iwagumi like that, you have to whack it as close as. The thing with ground covers is when they get going and they overgrown, like if you look at that tank, you will see how the first line of growth happens, then another one comes on top, and on and on and on. So what happened past the 6-month line? Cyanobacteria, the plants are growing so compact together that water circulation that naturally occurs when the plants are healthy, it starts getting compromised because the bottoms start decaying. I like to use Pristine and Clarity, which is a flocculant, and Pristine is bacteria additive that provides bacteria that biodegrades sludge naturally, and it thrives under low oxygen conditions. So I do a cap of Clarity with 3 caps of Pristine. I mix them all together. This will create the clusters of the bacteria. I get a syringe and I just go section by section injecting wherever the problems are happening, and it will help you to biodegrade all the waste that is happening because of decomposition of old plants and whatnot. So this will occur when you trim grasses or helantiums, because they can get pretty leggy, pretty tall. So you trim them to the crown. It's not something that naturally occurs, so sometimes they will struggle to bounce back, but they always do, especially when your water parameters are on point. So yeah, you can trim. How? It's all about the looks. You can trim halfway, 1/3, down to the crown. It doesn't really matter. They can recover because most of the roots are still healthy, so they will start shooting the leaves out.
Are there any plants that you avoid using?
Moss. Yeah. I love the look of it, but the amount of maintenance you have to use is crazy. Yeah, well, you see that exactly. That's. And it will just grow wild, and if you have a busy lifestyle, it's going to make you regret it every single minute of it.
Is that just job moss, or is it
They all do the same. The only one that is somehow manageable is Physidens. Physidens pontonalis is the one that you can probably easily manage, but the problem with Physidens is that naturally it does not occur in the tropics. It's a neotropical plant, so you need water that is going to be more on the 20 Celsius to make it happy. Otherwise, it looks leggy and brown and ugly, and it will deattach and float around. And so, regional variant of the one we're using today, which is Inclinata verticillata, the one that is found in, I believe it's Guyana, and another version in Venezuela, is Lurigia pantanal. And that thing is probably one of the most difficult plants to grow because it can be doing great, and if you look at it the wrong way, the next day it melts away and you'll never see it again. So I challenge myself with things like that just to keep me, sharp. But yeah, I really don't have something that I can say I despise this plant. If you will see my house, you'll probably think that I'm crazy, but I have plants growing in jars and buckets and aquariums and Ziploc bags with paper towel, and you name it, I have it.
That's honestly my dream. I can't be terrestrial.
Just like you need the knowledge for aquatic plants, you need to know by plant zone. We like the winter is different in America. I live in the south, so it's mild, but sometimes can be really harsh. So you really have to be selective on the species you use in order for the plants to thrive in the long term. And you see some beautiful gardens in Houston because it's really humid. And I've been trying to emulate these for a decade in my house, and no matter what I do and read, and I end up killing all my plants. But aquatic plants, I'll give you a run for your money.
Luis, what was the name of that?
Yeah, I know, I'm all about the nano stuff. Well, guys, it's been a pleasure and a privilege to Aquascape for you. This tank, again, may not win a contest, but if you bring it up, it will look very nice. And thank you, and thank you again for having me.